Started around midnight with a normal for me dose of mushroom tea. After the peak of the mushrooms, about 2.5 hours or more into the trip, added 10 mg of Foxy, which I had never tried before. At first, the speedy effects of it almost overwhelmed me. I don't always react well to speedy drugs, so was prepared for the side effects. However, I seemed to not be having any of the interesting things I had heard about Foxy, but an unshakable case of the twitches and body spasms. At one point, the spasms were so irritating, I considered taking a dose of Valium and sleeping it off. I'm glad I didn't. After about a half an hour of the twitches and spasms, I had a very intense wave of good body sluggishness, like everything had slowed down. My blood felt like it had slowed. This feeling increased steadily and in waves for a good duration of the trip. At many points, when I thought I was coming down, I would become completely incapacitated by another wave and sink back into the marshiness. The whole experience felt very swampy and pleasant. Once the speedy effects had worn off, my body experienced a very good overall physical feeling, similar to that of MDMA but with much less tactile senses. There were points when I could not feel my body parts or the person touching them. My memory of the trip is scattered, so some information is from my observer. It became very difficult for me to move any body parts, and I was thoroughly convinced that they didn't belong to me anyway. My observer stated later that my motor coordination and verbal skills seemed very ***, but I was very comfortable quickly with these alterations. I seemed to float in and out of consciousness at points, but was under the impression that I had gone somewhere else, not just into a sleep-type state. More than once while looking around the room, the objects and my observer disappeared and I was somewhere else. I knew inherently that they were there on the periphery but was not able to visualize them at all. A couple of times, I came back from one of the losing consciousness episodes and told my observer that I had left my body. I was pretty sure I had. This happened more than one time as well. It was a very comfortable and safe feeling. Partially B.C. I trusted my observer not to let anything bad happen. And also B.C. the leaving my body part was very interesting and pleasurable and had good body sensations associated with it. It was very freeing. Occasionally, my mind would be so disconnected from anything going on that I would say a sentence and then realize how incomprehensible and silly it was and retract it. There was a lovely one about waffle irons which was more tangential than I can even explain. For most of the peak of the trip and also while coming down, I had great difficulty speaking. At points, I couldn't talk at all and tried hand signals etc. to communicate and decided that it was just too much trouble. There were definitely points where the only thing I could do was lie on the floor and give in. Even with some strange visuals and places that I seemed to have gone. A bench outside a jail cell with PPL coming to lock me up, but my observer wouldn't let them. I felt very safe and comfortable the entire trip. Even when some of the music touched an uncomfortable spot, my mind seemed to accept that it was all natural and a needed piece of the trip, and I enjoyed it. It seemed that it would have been hard to find a way to mess up the trip. My overall mental state was very blissful and I remember laughing and smiling a lot. My visual experience was similar to some I have had on acid and mushrooms but was much richer and fuller. Things appeared from objects in the room and seemed to completely morph into things I had never seen before. This is what usually led to the out-of-body experiences. I don't know how long I was in these experiences. At approximately 9 a.m., I was still tripping but coming down slowly. I took 5 mg of Valium and got some sleep, then woke up and ate ravenously. I was still fairly trippy in the head but was mostly able to function. From the information I have been given about ketamine, I would say there were some definite similarities that I was not expecting and which I have been told are not usual reactions for Foxy. However, my experience was very pleasant and most likely will be repeated to see if the effects are similar on subsequent trips.